Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Simulation Pending Podcast, Episode 3. Well, this month we'll be talking about Halo Infinite, the Battle Pass, the microtransactions that have come alongside with it, and just generally what we're feeling about the game. With me, as always, is Charlie, Emmett, and Josh, and I think we'll start with Emmett. How have you been feeling about Halo Infinite?
Pretty good actually. I'm really surprised at how good the launch has been in contrast to other free-to-play launches. It seems like it's pretty good. It's kind of reminds me like Apex was also a pretty good launch. I think that was also like a stealth launch-esque kind of deal. I found it pretty good. There's a couple of like annoying bugs, but apart from that, I mean, I'm really impressed with just a decently made game, which might be a bit of a damning statement about the whole games industry as a whole, but it works, and that's really good.
Well, they took like an extra year to actually develop it, which is very, very rare in the games industry more broadly these days.
Yeah, delaying for such a long time is not necessarily something, and also to have the payoff, I guess, is something that we haven't necessarily seen before.
Oh yeah. But how about you, Charlie? How have you been feeling?
I mean, it just feels good to play Halo, like real Halo. Feels like playing Halo 3, Halo 2, CE back in the day, and that's all you can ask for, I think.
And lastly, Josh, any opinions on it?
I mean, I think I'm the same as Charlie. Absolutely loving Infinite. I've never been an Xbox or any console, really. I've always been PC, and Halo CE was my jam for a long time when it came to FPS, and this is feeling very much like that. So, absolutely loving the gameplay at this stage.
I think it's an interesting little side note is that they actually decided to finally release on PC straight up as well, because hasn't it normally been Xbox first and then a couple of months later at best we'll get PC?
It's a lot longer than a few months. Most of the time it's been years. This is the first launch across both platforms, yes.
Wasn't Master Chief Collection the first time 3 had been on a computer?
It was, and 2 had only been on computer through Games for Windows Live, which anyone who ever used that will remember it was an absolute nightmare, and it was barely worth dealing with to be able to play Halo 2 on PC, but it was the only way until Master Chief Collection came along a few years ago.
And then I'm not entirely sure about 4 and 5. I don't think they were on.
4 has been on PC because MCC.
Yeah.
Alongside that, effectively. Halo 5 is yet to be on PC.
Yeah, it was really sort of MCC was really sort of what it brought it all back, I guess.
Yes.
Oh, I reckon they probably saw the numbers when they actually released it, the other Halos on computer, and went, oh, wait a second, you make money when you put games on PC.
I think it's also one of those things that we've finally hit that point where crossplay is the norm, and I think it's almost a detriment to your game if you don't have crossplay these days. So maybe back in the day, people saw it as like, Xbox almost certainly saw it as, we're going to keep Halo as an Xbox exclusive so people will buy Xboxes. But now it's less of that. It's more of, all right, people want to play the game. Let's just let everyone play the game.
Well, I suppose because it's I don't know if it's on MacBook at all, but I know Xbox is Microsoft now, so
yeah, well,
Halo's a Microsoft exclusive now, technically.
Yeah, exactly right. But
well,
then
it has been for a long time.
It is on Steam though, which is a fucking big win.
Oh, fuck every game that doesn't go on Steam. I absolutely hate EA for is Origin EA?
Yes.
I don't know. There's a few of them that I don't touch.
Yeah, Origin and Uplay and Games Windows Live. That brought me back like repressed memories, Josh.
Yeah.
What an absolute miserable experience.
Yeah, but it was the only way to play Halo 2. I did it, and it was so good.
I don't know what game it was, but I had a game on Windows Live and I lost all my progress and it kept happening. It's just, dude, I hate it.
That was the thing where you had to be logged in or for it to work?
Something like that.
Yes.
Because it's terrible.
I think I played Street Fighter, and even though it was through Steam, you still had to log in through Windows against Windows Live, and it was just horrendous.
It was the evil sibling of the modern Xbox app that you have on.
Yes.
Which, as we know, multiple games have to log in through.
Yeah.
But at least that is a functional system that generally doesn't cause issues. Games for Windows Live was like that, but terrible in almost every way.
Yeah, but no, I think it's refreshing to Halo was almost just not necessarily forgotten about, but to a lot of people, myself included, grew up playing Halo, whether it was on Xbox, whether it was on the computer. Halo almost had left this bad or sour taste in people's mouths after 4 and 5. And I think it's incredible to see it coming back and getting almost the recognition you think Halo should get, or deserves, I guess, because it feels like everyone is loving it. I don't think there's too much to say that's bad about it. And I think it shows with such good publicity across the board.
At least when it comes to the core gameplay.
Yeah, exactly.
I was about to make that little sneaky transition, because all of that positive press has definitely got that sort of asterisk at the end going, but just don't look at the cash shop or the microtransaction shop, because
Or the progression.
it's pretty horrific. Even for a free-to-play game, it's pretty pricey. Because what was in the bundle earlier today, Josh? It was like 2 knives for $15.
Yeah,
You know, I've done a picture of a knife.
Yeah, 2
It
knives
was
and 15.
two cosmetics, so a knife that goes on your chest and a knife that goes on your leg. And as with all cosmetics in this game, those are specific to one of the cores. And then there was a nameplate which looked like a knife, and that bundle was $15 Australian.
Oh, yeah, it's probably best to specify Australian dollars. It's not as
Yes.
valuable as...
Yeah, exactly.
But it's still...
I guess when you look at it from American standpoint or US dollars standpoint, that like that particular thing was 1,000 points. To the Americans, that just means it's $10. But for us, it's like not $10, more like 15. And that 20,
10
more
US
like
is
30.
still pretty pricey, right?
It's definitely still
that's just a
pricey.
pricey.
Say minor cosmetic, especially. That's more of the issues. There are plenty of games that have cosmetics that cost that much. That is one of the cheaper options that is on the cash shop right now. That's not one of the big bundles. There is
It's
another
also-
bundle on currently, which is twice that price. So that would be 30 AU.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And that's just the daily deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
'Cause
Correct.
in theory, they do something...
The $30 one is a weekly.
The $30 is weekly.
I think the dailies are always somewhere around $15 or $20.
Yeah.
pretty hectic that you could probably spend $15 a day on Halo knives.
Yeah.
The grand scheme of it.
And cosmetics that are importantly, there is currently no other way to get those. Whether that changes in the future, I don't know, but we can't really assume that at this stage, I would say.
They've seemed to take on a lot of feedback, especially around the battle pass, because that used to be like I still have a lot of issues with the challenge system, but they at least gave points for doing like actually just playing the game.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're kind
Those
of
first
listening.
couple of days, just like finishing a game and seeing nothing pop up was just like, well, why did I get this battle pass? But yeah, it's something it's clear that they want to like figure it out. I mean, of course they do, because everyone's really pissed off about it. But it's good to see that they are making changes. I mean, of course it's always going to be to make money, but at least it's less egregious.
Which I think is fair, and everyone sort of accepts the fact that if it's a free-to-play game, then of course there's going to be microtransactions.
Oh,
Of course,
exactly.
like, that's how they make money, but there's certainly still a point where it gets a bit too much. Although, do we know how much the core game is actually going to cost? Because I can't imagine that the campaign's going to be free.
I believe it is a full price.
Yeah, $90 for
No-
the campaign.
Yeah, 90 Australian. So
Yeah.
your standard sort of full-priced AAA launch, which it is Halo, and everything that people with early access are saying is that the campaign is very good. So
Yeah.
I think that is a perfectly reasonable.
Yeah, the other thing you have to think about with Halo, especially, like, I mean, we touched on crossplay, but Xbox, like, box games have a price that they always are. So they couldn't necessarily make the Steam version any cheaper. So it's just got to be the box price.
Oh, yeah, which is perfectly fine, but it's still a case of, you're getting the full price game and the sort of free-to-play.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would
But I
have
think
liked
they-
it if you
I
bought
think-
the game, it would have been a lot easier to get a lot more of the cosmetics because you actually bought in. It's not just
Or
like
maybe,
a $90
I mean,
campaign.
I know other games have done similar things where if you buy the campaign, you get a certain number of like Halo points, and that's worth however many things in the shop.
I don't know if they're going to do that. I do
No.
believe I've heard somewhere that there are likely going to be cosmetics that are exclusive to people who have played the
Yeah.
campaign, which I
Yeah.
think is fair. Again, I think that's a nice reward
Yeah,
to
100%.
have. I don't know that with 100% certainty. I cannot remember exactly where I saw that. It was a little while ago now, so that may not be the case anymore, or I may be incorrect.
I think
with
that's
that, but
fairly reasonable, to be honest.
yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I think they've done definitely the right thing, because they're going to have more people wanting to play the multiplayer than they are the story. So it's good that it's free. But yeah, I don't know. I'll probably wait until Josh. I'm assuming you'll probably might pick up the campaign at some point.
Certainly. That was
so-
the thing I was most excited about with Infinite.
Yeah.
I had not expected to be as invested in terms of time into the multiplayer as I have been. And it's quite possible I'll drop away from the multiplayer as we start playing it as a group as regularly as new things come along. But
Yeah,
I've already
exactly.
very much enjoyed the multiplayer. But the campaign was what I was looking forward to most from the get-go.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it's like I think I'd probably quite enjoy the campaign, but I'll probably hold off and see what the rest of the world thinks about it, and see what you think about it as well, and then make my decision as whether I pick it up.
It is a bit disappointing that there's no co-op on launch of any kind, but especially a co-op campaign. I can imagine why that might be difficult to pull off with the more open world that they're going with the campaign. That might be a little bit more complex, but it is disappointing because co-op campaign and things like Firefight or Spartan Ops in the past have always been one of the highlights of any Halo game. So that's
think
disappointing.
It's something. I mean, I think it's something that's across a lot of games at the moment, and I think maybe we're seeing a resurgence to it. But co-op is one of my favorite things in any game. Like particularly games like Halo. I mean, that's what made the Xbox back in the day so much fun was the co-op, both the campaign and the split screen multi. So it is a shame, but yeah, you're probably right in that open world sense that it would have been difficult to pull off.
Well, they're still gonna do it though, aren't they?
I don't know if they've said anything official on that.
I think they have said that they will, but it's not going to be at launch. They're still working out the bugs, something like that.
That's my understanding. I would be absolutely flabbergasted if they were never going to put co-op in. It is such a crucial part of every Halo game, and they even were leaning into it a bit more with the more recent ones, Spartan Ops in 4, and the way co-op worked in 5 with actually the entire fire team having distinct characters that you played as. They were obviously leaning into that a bit more in the story and the design, so I have to assume they will do it, but it's just not going to be on launch, which is disappointing, but I am assuming it will come at some stage, and that will be fantastic whenever it does.
Well, hopefully they let us know soon, because that'd probably be the point where I'd be very interested to get it on, because I can't imagine it's going to be, a mega long campaign. It's not going to be like a Divinity original sin level.
No,
definitely not.
No. Everything. So I've paid a fair bit of attention to a lot of the content creators that have received early access to the campaign, and they're saying even though it is open world, it is a much smaller and more curated open world than something, say, like a Far Cry or a Assassin's Creed style of game.
Yeah.
And historically, Halo campaigns have not been all that long. I have to assume that the open world aspect will make the campaign at least potentially longer. Maybe the main story will be a similar length, but there's more things to do outside of that. I think the open world, once co-op does happen, will certainly open things up in that regard as well.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully, like you said, they bring in things like Spartan Ops and all of that would add just so much more value.
I'm really happy that they're learning from the mistakes of other games, not to make just an arbitrarily large open world. That's one of the big issues with open worlds, so much nothingness, right? And I think a tighter, smaller open world experience is really how you do it. So I'm really excited to see how that actually plays out.
I think Dishonored actually did that style very, very well, because there was very little nothingness there, and what there was, you could sort of just teleport around. So I imagine it'll be somewhat similar in Halo with all of the like grappling hooks and whatnot, which we've already been able to play around with in multiplayer.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, going back on I think Battle Pass in general on Halo, pretty reasonable. I mean, I think Battle Passes are a pretty decent way of doing monetization, unless they're sometimes they're super shit, but I think for the most part you get pretty good value out of it. But I think the microtransactions are probably a little bit pricey in the regular shop, I'd say. I do appreciate that they've announced that a portion from each microtransaction is going to go towards the tournament's prize pool. I think that's quite good, and it means that at least a little bit of it's doing something for the community. But yeah, I think they're probably just that little bit too expensive for me to pull the trigger on them, and probably a lot of other people.
I'd love to see, because when you're determining prices, if they don't have a financial analyst doing this, I'd be absurdly surprised. But there's effectively a point between price and the people who would actually buy it at that price, and obviously where the lines intersect, that's where the most profit is. So they must have done the research and assume that price point that we're seeing is the most profitable, which seems absurd. I don't know if people have just sort of been browbeaten into accepting that level of price for microtransactions or not, because it seems more and more common that a lot of those sort of transactions in even other games is getting pretty pricey. Because I do like the battle pass system that you were sort of mentioning, because what was that? Was that another $15?
I think it's about $15, yeah.
It was 15 or 20, something like that.
I think it's 1,000 of the Halo points, so it's
okay, so $15 then.
Yeah. So it's $15 for theoretically an absolute ton of cosmetics, but then there's the same price as the two little daggers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's almost probably where they look at Battle Pass as being if people play this game, they're almost certainly going to buy it. So you make that $15 off of anyone who's an active player. It's the shop items that I think they try and cater a little bit more towards what they would call whales. like, because they know the majority of people are not going to buy skins regularly, if at all. So they know that they just have to cater to that highest common denominator, I guess.
I think there's probably also the question of how many of these bundles are people going to buy? Because not everyone is going to like every armor set that comes on or every skin. So you may not necessarily, we might be thinking of these price points as in, what if you're buying a lot of them, that cost adds up.
Yeah, exactly.
But they could be looking at this as, right, what's the average player going to buy over, say, a season? So over the course of 3, 6, 12 months, something like that.
Yeah. And then
most people are probably not going to buy tons of things. So, if I'm only getting 2 or 3 things, maybe that's a lot more reasonable. I think one thing they might have underestimated, or that may be currently being overblown by the community, is that a lot of Halo players, especially those who have played a lot of past games in the series, really like having all of the options they can for customization.
Yeah.
They really like filling out their collection so that they can do whatever they want with their Spartan. And that's where this system is probably not going to be great, because if you want all of those options, and especially if all of those, or a lot of those options even, remain only available through the cash shop, you are going to spend a lot of money collecting all of them.
Yeah.
I think that goes more onto maybe the more dark psychology, like part of microtransactions, and you're probably a bit more, well, you're very qualified to actually talk about it, but it's the fear of missing out. And I think it leads back to that people really want to have all of the options.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the exact reason why they have daily specials.
Yeah.
And it's the exact reason why they have a timer ticking down. It's like, if you want this, you got to get it, because who knows when it's going to come back.
Which is interesting, because 343 have been very clear, at least in a lot of their marketing, that they want to avoid FOMO and fear of missing out as much as possible in Halo Infinite, which is why they have systems like the Battle Pass is around forever. So when this season ends, the Battle Pass for it stays around and you can keep leveling that up throughout future seasons. Yeah. None of those things are going away. So assuming that they have been honest with that, this is the assumption I'm making for this statement. If they are true that they are avoiding all forms of FOMO in the game, everything that is on the cash shop currently coming up as daily deals will come back up again, and it will keep being available. It may not be available every single day, but it will come back regularly enough that you don't have to panic about buying it now.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
and I can definitely see, like, particularly popular things, like maybe it gets a variant that comes up in another battle pass later on, or it's a variant that comes up in a weekly challenge that's not the same one that someone bought 2 months prior, but it's something similar, so that it's like people can still get access to them.
I mean, they're sort of saying that, but then as we sort of already covered, like, they've got the timer in the shop. Like, just because the item's going to return later, it's not like in the back of your head it's just like, okay, cool, it'll be fine, I'll get it in 2 weeks. You don't know when it's going to come back. The time is ticking.
It's still preying on that mechanism.
It is still preying on it, but it's not as bad as some, like, I'm thinking in my head at the moment is like, I'm thinking exactly about Valorant's shop. The thing about Valorant shop is it changes every day, but it's completely randomized. So my shop's different to your shop. Your shop's different to Declan's shop. So at least in Halo, if an item comes back, everyone gets access to it again. Whereas in
you don't have to log on every single day.
Exactly. In some other games, like I was saying in Valorant, you just have to pray that one day, hopefully soon, that the skin that you want pops up. And if not, then you're not going to get the skin, because it's completely randomized, so you may not see a skin in theory.
And to be clear, I definitely don't think this is the best way to be doing a cash shop. Irrelevant of the prices, I still think with things like this, and I fully understand that the finances don't work as well for the company. I understand that if they did what I'm about to suggest, they would not make as much money, which is why they don't do it. But from a consumer standpoint, a system where you have a premium currency that you can either earn or buy, which is what they have, but you then just have a shop that has a list of things, and I can browse through and be like, oh, this is the skin I want. I think, as far as I'm aware, no system to view everything that is available in the shop, even if that system was in place, but things aren't all available at the same time. Like, you could still have the same system with things popping up, but we could assume that the things listed in your Spartan cosmetics that are listed as, I think they use a phrase something like, wait and see, or this will appear later, or something like that. Presumably those things are the other potential things that could pop up in the shop. I don't know for sure. You don't know when they're going to pop up. And this is why I had to make clear that we are assuming they are following their policy of not having any FOMO in the game, which you're right, even just having that timer does create that mentality. And they have not been clear within the game itself. So there are probably a lot of people playing that aren't aware of the fact that they don't want FOMO. So I think they could certainly have advertised that better. It is still, even if these things do come back on a regular basis, it is still not a great system. I'm definitely not saying it's excellent by any stretch.
I suppose that's almost the issue with almost sort of stealth dropping a game, is that you don't really have the time to, I mean, not even just build up hype, but to actually explain, like, here's the tidbits that you have to know. Like, we're aiming not to have FOMO, I should say. You know, cash, here's how everything's going to, work. And you can get the discussion a lot earlier as opposed to dropping it on people and then, awesome, I'm having great fun playing Halo again, but there's the little niggling caveats in the back of your head.
Well, information like that should just be given in the shop. All of that should be made up front when someone goes to spend real money. And I think we all know, like, it's very much obvious that you don't do that, because if you do that, overall you will make less money. These are all business, not gameplay decisions designed to optimize profits rather than improve the player experience.
Exactly.
If they were concerned about making people's experience as positive as possible, they would have information like that up front in the shop. They would have probably different systems for getting consumables. They would probably have a system for, it would be very slow, but a system for people to earn premium currency by playing the game rather than forcing people to pay money, which, being free to play, changes how that would have to function a little bit. But there could be a lot of things that could be done if they were more worried about player experience than about making money.
Yeah, and I think there is a thing in that it's almost, we have to have a shop. It's never going to be perfect because we have to make money in a certain way. But yeah, I agree. Like, they could forego potentially a small amount, potentially a large amount of money to make it more enjoyable and give everyone access to it. But I think the shop serves a purpose in every game, and I think they don't go too deep into necessarily wanting the shop to service every player. I think the shop in a game, especially like Halo, it's not something that every person is going to interact with, and they know that. So they're just going for the whales.
I'd love to see the actual, like, sort of research done behind that, though, because I reckon you're actually right that they're really just going, well, the people who are going to put money into it don't care about price, so if we put it at $15, cool.
Exactly.
But I'd love to see if they say put it down to 10, and that's a bit more in the range of, oh yeah, no, I can drop that, or even have that little dark psychological twist and go, no, it's only $9.99 because you're not spending a fucking dollar note. But I'd love to see, because that sort of price point really brings it down to the price point we'd probably buy a lot more.
Exactly. And I think it really would be interesting to see how they've approached it, and if it is just, all right, we're putting the shop in. The shop is not designed for everyone, because it never is going to be. So they just go in knowing that. Like, maybe that is the strategy that they've gone for. It probably is, but it would be interesting to see if they explored the option of doing it not that way. Maybe make the shop more into something that everyone would interact with. But then I think there's always people who are never going to go to a shop anyway. Just play the game as it is.
And that's the reason. I think the higher prices are because there's a battle pass. Because the rationale behind it is that once someone has paid money on a game, it breaks that barrier, that feeling of, oh, am I going to really pay money for this, which is dominant in mobile gaming.
Yeah,
it's the correct decision to buy the battle pass, because you're going to be playing all these games,
exactly,
so much XP. Then you buy it, and then I don't actually remember if I have 100 Halo points left over or something. That's a common trick that you can't actually just buy it. You get a bit more, and then you can't buy anything with it. But like, once you've done it, it's so easy to just buy something else,
and that's why battle passes are on average really good value. It's because they're supposed to be really good value.
That little pay you're buying.
Yeah, that's the buy-in. Once someone's spent that money on the battle pass, then I've got 100 left. I've got 200 points left. I might just put another $10 on.
I would like to say, Emma, just on that point, Infinite seems to be very good on not doing that with the points. Most things, like, you can buy 1,000 things, and you're right, that is something very common, and it is one of the most egregious things that a lot of cash shops do, is that, they are functionally designed to be difficult to buy the correct amount of currency. Halo Infinite seems to very much not be doing that. The majority of bundles, you can buy the exact amount of currency for.
Exactly. I did buy the $30 bundle because I'm shameless, right? But I do have an extra $200, 200 Halo points or whatever it is. So that does exist, but not for the battle pass, which is really good design, I think.
Well, exactly.
It's not as predatory.
Yeah, it's like the battle pass
yeah.
is 1,000 and you could buy 1,000. It's not 1,250 and you can only buy 1,000 or 2,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So no, I do want to say that I was pleased to see that they were not being outright evil with that. Yeah, well, for all we can complain about the prices, they do seem to be at least making them reasonably easy to get in that respect, and not going too hard on what is more common in other cash shops in terms of shenanigans to make people spend more money.
Exactly. But I 100% agree. It is that breaking that first barrier.
Yeah.
Once you step beyond, once you've put money in, they I guess in their eyes they've got you, because I don't know what the statistics would be, but I imagine it's significantly more people are willing to purchase more if they have purchased prior.
Straight up sunk cost. Like
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
literally what it is at that point.
Exactly.
And I think the issue with cheaper cosmetics for the company is that I bought my expensive cosmetic, and I have no desire to buy any other cosmetic because I have my skin. And if it would cost $5 or $30, it doesn't matter. And so it's a simple choice for 343 whether they get $5 or $30 out of me.
Well, exactly right. If you're gonna, like, the money almost, unless it's massive amounts of money, the money almost doesn't matter, because if you've made the decision to purchase a skin, or you are the type of person who is inclined to purchase skins, you're going to pay whatever price.
There's not a whole lot of difference
10
between
or
$20 or $30.
Exactly right.
I think that difference is more at the smaller ranges of like $5. I think definitely more people would buy it, but I think once you hit $10 or $15, I think people are happy to pay $20, $50, $25.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's worth noting as well, just generally in gaming, in terms of microtransactions and in terms of price points, is the average age of gamers has gone up.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and especially with something like Halo, a lot of the people who are going to be playing Infinite are people like us who grew up playing Halo.
Yeah, exactly right.
When we played, CE 2, 3, we were in high school.
Yeah.
We didn't have a huge amount of dispensable income. We didn't have all this. Now we're all adults who have jobs and substantial amounts of disposable income to varying degrees. So a $20 or $30 skin means a lot less. And that's just something generally I think we've seen a shift in game as that. And especially as people get older and more in terms of more professions, the graph shifts toward having more money free than time free.
Exactly right, yeah. So people are like, say the battle pass gives me a helmet, or the shop gives me a helmet. Well, I know the battle pass is going to take me ages to finish because I'm working 8 hours a day.
One of the interesting things with the battle pass is you can buy levels.
Well,
yes.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
So you can slap down, I don't know what, someone's done the calculations, you can slap down, I think it's like $100 or $80.
It'd be 20,000.
And you can get, you can
I think
get
it's a few
level
$100.
Yeah.
Just
Australia.
instantly. I've seen a lot of people who've had like 80s plus like things like the flaming shoulders, or when they kill someone, there's a skull like that, like battle pass, like level like 50 or something. So people are doing it quite frequently.
Which if you're a professional who has an hour, maybe 2 a day to do video games or other recreation, but buying that entire battle pass is a few hours of your work, maybe a day of your work, depending on how much money you make. Suddenly that decision, that investment becomes a lot more reasonable.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to be able to get through, even with the improvements to the battle pass now that they've made in terms of experience gain, you might not be able to get through it in the time allowed, but because you work and you make a good amount of money, you can just say, okay, rather than spending lots of time, I'm going to spend some of my money on it. And I think it's interesting that a lot of gaming culture still doesn't seem to be at that point yet. For all we complain about the prices in the marketplace, and my issue is as much with the prices as it is with the number of different things and the way they're coming and going. I don't think the cost of buying the entire battle pass in terms of levels is necessarily that crazy, because you have a very clear equivalency of time versus money in that case.
Well, exactly right.
Do you remember what the current stats for the average gamer is? Because isn't it like a 30-something-year-old man?
I think the age...
A 30-something-year-old man with 1 or 2 children who is married, who works 40-something hours a week was the last I heard, I think. Basically, a early to mid-30s professional male is the quote-unquote average gamer, which as more and more people pick up games, becomes less and less meaningful as a state.
Exactly.
But that age and that income. And I think the stat also included that they have between 1 and 2 hours of free time a day.
Yeah, about that. Which is probably another reason why games really want to get you to have that buy-in as well. Because there's actually it's a time deficit in general. They have to actually get you invested so they can actually make any sort of money before they enter the shop system like talking about.
Exactly.
Probably good that Halo did have that extra year, because as we have sort of been saying, it has been been a very good game. Like, it's been worth the time we've put into it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the thing that I keep hearing, and I agree with wholeheartedly, is that I think the core of Halo's gameplay is just fun. Maybe a year ago they weren't as happy with it as they are now. I assume most of the reason why it was delayed for a long time was because of the campaign, but still, they've clearly just done a very, very good job at making this an entertaining shooter.
Or wasn't there like a beta or something a year ago, and then everyone's feedback was like, yeah, nah, this isn't it, Chief? And they sort of went back.
I know that there was the thing where they released that trailer where the graphics weren't that good, and people compared the graphics of the very close to launch trailer to the graphics of the trailer that from 2 years ago, and people were like, what's going on here? So I know that was definitely a part as well in the delay, because they obviously wanted to make everything look better. But I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there might have been gameplay as part of that trailer that people sort of took.
Yeah, as well as gameplay. Yeah, for sure.
There was a lot of mixed feedback about that trailer when it came out.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of the reason. I don't know that it was entirely the reason for the delay, but there was definitely some things picked up in that where they said, yep, well, these are some of the things we're doing in the delay. And several of them I know were things specifically raised as complaints about the trailer. Now, whether they were planning to fix those beforehand or not, I don't know if we ever found that out, because it's entirely possible that there were issues with that trailer that they knew going in and wanted to fix anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, there were a lot of things that could potentially have been improved. And I think you're correct that the campaign was a big part of that delay in terms of really trying to get it right, which from early reports, it sounds like they might have pulled it off.
And that's the thing is even if most of their time was spent on that campaign, it's still like another year of time. They're always going to make improvements to stuff like multiplayer.
Yeah. Well, and also given that the multiplayer is free to play, in many ways the campaign is the thing they need to
exactly
put that time into, because that's where they're going to make probably the majority of their money.
100%.
At least in the short term.
Yeah, at least in the short term.
With the 10-year plan they apparently have.
The multiplayer will probably, over X number of years or however long, will beat it, but at least in the short term, they're going to make their money from the campaign.
Exactly. And a good chunk of the funding for that 10-year plan will presumably come from the money made from launch.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of which presumably will be from the campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Declan, you might have a better instinct for the finances behind that. That's my guess. I don't.
No, that seems pretty spot on. I think the one interesting thing I'd love to see, depending on how they do the campaign, and we're going to have to actually see it to make any judgment call, especially if they have a 10-year plan, is if they're going to add different campaign or say have DLC content on top of.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw like expansion in a similar fashion to what Destiny has done, where the expansions, are like extensions of the story.
There is a bit of precedent for that in that Spartan Ops in Halo 4. Now, I don't know this with absolute certainty, and I don't know the exact way it was done, because Spartan Ops was released in full with 4 when it came out on PC, but that was done episodically. So that was released over a period of time with episodes over time. I don't know if those were paid DLC, but there is at least a precedent from that of longer term sort of episodic style release of DLC and content for a Halo game. And in that case, it was the co-op content for Halo 4 that was done in that way. But yeah, with a 10-year plan, I would not be surprised to see story DLCs for the co-op like Spartan Ops was, all of those things being released over a period of time.
Yeah. Because 10 years, especially because 10 years is a very long time not to release a new updated game. Like, a Paradox Interactive can sort of get away with it. They've been their MO for ages. And, we could even touch on Paradox's DLC microtransaction policy later. But doing that for a first-person shooter like Halo seems a bit dicier in a way.
Yeah.
Especially with the established story and lore, because I can almost guarantee that within a very short time of Halo Infinite's release of the campaign, people will already be chomping at the bit for new Halo stories, lore, all of these things, because and a lot of people who play Halo don't necessarily engage in a great deal of depth with it, but the Halo lore and story is one of the standout universes from gaming, I think is fair to say.
100%.
The amount of extra content there is from books and series and all of this, there is a huge amount of potential for them to do long-term storytelling, and I think there will be a great demand demand for more
No.
Halo, more Master
No doubt.
Chief, all of these things. So
Yeah.
I think even on a base level, everyone's sort of engaged with the Halo lore on some level. Like, you know, everyone still remembers the Flood in Halo 1. Cortana's an infamous enough character that she's the voice of Microsoft. Like,
yes.
you know, if you're going to make that sort of commitment, then
exactly
it's a
right.
recognizable name.
And hopefully she at least will get something better in this than she did in 5. That's a...
Yeah.
I will not get into the story issues of recent Halo games, but I think that's this is another opportunity for them, with it being something of a spiritual reboot, to fix some of those issues, which again, they might be able to do with that more long-term storytelling. Who knows?
Well, it'd be interesting because over 10 years, you'd effectively have multiplayer and the story campaign mode running in parallel. Because, you know, the cash shop we've been sort of talking about is pretty much exclusively for the multiplayer. You don't really expect it to, you don't really expect to be able to customize Master Chief after all.
No, exactly right. And I think it is one of those other things that you look at. Like, I look at the way they talk about the multiplayer and the longevity of what they have plans for. I think a big part of their 10-year plan is obviously going to be, I think they'd be crazy not to put out more campaign content. But I think a big part of their 10-year plan is multiplayer. Like, and the way that they conduct talking about multiplayer and talking about the competitions and all of this stuff is they are planning for this to be like, I mean, CS is 20 something years old. They're wanting this to be like CS in that way, that it's just ever living.
If you're doing seasons as your battle pass, I think that's immediately a statement that there are going to be a lot.
Yeah.
Well, the HCS is ongoing at the moment, and it's been getting like, what, 5-6K on YouTube, which is pretty impressive for a YouTube stream.
Yeah, and I think it's regularly above 20K on Twitch. So it's certainly, I mean, you can see, I mean, obviously a lot of that's hype. It's only been out for 2 weeks or however long, but it is something that you can see that people want Halo. People want to be able to watch and play Halo.
Especially for just qualifiers. I think that's the other big one.
Yeah.
Because I reckon a lot more people are going to be interested when it's like, oh, here are the qualified teams. Like, here's the best of the best at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, when they sit down for the LAN in mid this month, I think they'll probably get quadruple the amount of viewers that they've had recently, because there's just so much more at stake when you're playing for like $300,000 or whatever they're playing for.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were approaching like 100,000-ish mark on Twitch at least.
Oh yeah, 100%. Especially one, because there's going to be hype around it even more, because it'll be the first one as well. On top of the fact that for the past 2 years, we haven't had a lot of in-person tournaments anywhere in the world, that is. No. And then you get people who, or like me, I don't play that much CS anymore, but I'm always down to tune into a major or like one of the big events, because it's entertaining.
I reckon Halo is just as entertaining. Like,
yeah, exactly.
CS is a lot more like slow-paced in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas
right.
Halo's fast-paced, but it's still that sort of got a similar vibe.
Yeah, 100%.
I would also say Halo is going to be a lot more accessible and have a much wider potential audience, because, you know, in order to be someone like you, Charlie, who you may not play but you're happy to tune in, you still need to have enough of an understanding of a game to be able to enjoy watching it, generally speaking.
Yeah, not only do you need to know how to play the game, which is one thing, which for certain things, like one of the downfalls of StarCraft was that it was incredibly difficult to understand what the fuck was going on screen unless you played a lot of StarCraft. But something like Halo is everyone understands. It doesn't matter if you've ever played Halo before, you understand exactly what's going on.
And a lot more people have played Halo. And I think one of the
people, yeah, exactly.
One of the advantages Infinite will have is it feels so much more like early Halos than 4 or 5, or especially 5 did.
Yeah.
People who haven't played Infinite or haven't played Halo in 5-10 years will probably be able to tune in. If they played Reach, if they played 3, if they played CE, they're going to be able to recognize
what's going on, exactly.
How movement works, how the game's going. They're going to be able to pass the game pretty easily.
So I reckon that probably the most complicated thing in Halo, if you were to watch it, would be Oddball. Like, that's it. And, a mobile captured, like, King of the Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of spectating, if you haven't played more modern Halos, things like some of the abilities, Reach obviously had those, but some of the usage of those things, like having the grapple now, is obviously new, but there were a lot more different things in 5 with the way your jetpack worked and hovering.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of those things, on the most basic spectating level, it didn't read as much as Halo as I think Infinite will, because things like armor abilities have been in the game long enough now that even if they're not the same as they were previously, it's still going to be understandable enough.
They are also still fairly basic at their core. Some of that like levitating stuff and all the other weird stuff that went on in Halo 5. Those things, like, you have to think about that for a second to understand what's going on. But a grappling hook makes perfect sense. A dash to one side makes sense. And even a punch that knocks people back makes perfect sense.
Yeah, exactly. And it would just be the technical usage of those that might throw people off for a second, but it won't be anywhere near as much of a problem. So I think in that regard, Infinite is really well placed to be very accessible as a viewable esport.
Yeah,
I will say before we sort of go to final thoughts that whoever did the UI design for Halo is brilliant. Like, you jump in first time and you pick up those power-ups. You know what they are very easily.
Yeah, exactly.
Using them is a bit more interesting to learn how to do because, I swear the grappling hook should be like 1 meter longer.
Yeah, 100%. The amount of times I've just like pointed at a wall and nothing's happened.
And I walk 2 steps and it's there. Yeah, I reckon to close, Emmett, do you have any final words for Halo?
I guess I'm really keen to see how it'll mature. I think there's been a lot of changes that have been for the better. Like when it released, there was no XP per game, and then they added 50 XP per game. Now they've added a lot more XP per game. I think in a couple of months, if they continue this trajectory, the game will be in a much better place. I guess like when it releases, when Halo officially releases on the 8th or whatever, in about 5 days, it'll be in a much better place than what it was initially. As long as they do a couple of changes just to how the game works. I'm really keen to see how it goes. Right, like I'm really optimistic, and that's pretty rare for a new release game. Feel optimistic to feel that people complain about certain things and then they get fixed.
Yeah,
it's really good to see that happen.
The devs have been really vocal, and it's been
pretty quickly.
Really good to see.
And I have seen, like I saw on Reddit, there was a dev response in relation to changes to capture the flag and oddball. I think in previous games, the flag melee would one hit and a couple other things. And a dev actually responded and gave a pretty thorough rationale as to why they changed that. And that's just something it's so easy, but obviously doesn't happen that often, sadly. But it's really promising to see it.
Charlie, do you have any final thoughts?
For me, final thoughts are pretty much circle back to where it started. And again, I'm happy to be playing a game that feels like Halo. It's good fun. And again, I echo what Emmett said. I'm really interested to see where it goes because it's been out for a few weeks now. It's changed a lot since then. Who knows where it's going to be in another 2 months? And I can only imagine significantly more streamlined and better to play, I guess.
Last but not least, Josh.
I think the others are very much saying the same thing. I feel that this, especially the gameplay, this feels like a very well-crafted game, which sadly has not been the most common thing that we can say in the last few years. But other than a few minor gameplay gripes, obviously the lack of collision is an issue, but other than a few things like that, this feels very well polished, and it really does feel like Halo. As Charlie said, for me, Halo was my first FPS, and this really feels like a return to that. So, and as Emmett said, I'm very optimistic given how the devs have responded thus far. I think Infinite is in a position to be a game that will not just be played for many years to come, but remembered as something really special. And I hope they can pull that off.
I reckon we're all definitely on the same page there. The only thing I'd love to change is the grappling hook, a little bit more range, and the melee feels a bit janky here and there.
I will say that Emmett said the same thing, and then after playing a bit more and getting the hang of it, he now likes it. I believe I don't want to speak for you too much there, Emmett, but
yeah, I think it's definitely a bit different. I think that collision would make it a bit more like,
yes,
at least I would know if I'm like, sometimes I will fail to kill someone, and it's like, or I melee someone and then I don't know where they are. That's a bit unpleasant, but the melee gets a lot easier.
The melee is very
easier
much
to manage.
The melee is very much Halo melee, and that's something if you haven't played a lot of, especially the more recent Halos, it will take a bit of getting used to. But I picked it up and it immediately felt very natural and very good because I have, especially 3 and beyond that, had this style of melee. It felt really, really good from that perspective. So I would say that's probably just a Halo thing that a lot of other games don't do.
Yeah, and hopefully with a 10-year plan, they'll actually build on that a lot more as well. I imagine they'll actually have the leeway to really, really do it. I reckon for now, that's another episode done. Thank you, everyone who's made it this far into the episode. If one thing I forgot to mention at the start is we are now available on Spotify as well. And till next time, have a great week.